Illuminati, quest for world domination. The Illuminati are the single most evil and diabolical organization on the planet. This book describes in detail the origin and root core belief of the Illuminati. It explains what their evil agenda is, who's behind it, why you haven't heard about it, and, most importantly, the dire consequences that face humanity should this agenda succeed. They have only one goal in life: to enslave the good people of the earth and establish their Novus Ordo Seclorum, or New World Order. After reading this book, you'll see things around you that were always in plain sight, but you weren't able to notice their significance before. This information will pull the scales off your eyes to see a world that you didn't even know existed right in front of you.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The Matrix.
Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Secret meetings. On the outskirts of the national capital of the United States of America, black limousines with darkened windows converged on a hotel where private security guards imposed ironclad control. The limos carried royalty, political power brokers, and industrial titans to hold secret meetings. It is known as the Bilderberg Group. Could their objective be world domination? Let's hear what John F. Kennedy had to say about it.
Remarks of the President to the American Newspaper Publishers Association, Waldorf Astoria Hotel, New York City, April 27, 1961.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate very much your generous invitation to be here tonight. I want to talk about our common responsibilities in the face of a common danger. The events of recent weeks may have helped to illuminate that challenge for some, but the dimensions of its threat have loomed large on the horizon for many years. Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it. There is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.
Out of these troubled times, a new world order is being emerged, a new era. David Rockefeller. A covert network of elite families is controlling world events from behind the scenes. Unknown to most, we are currently witnessing the final stages of a sinister, global agenda being carried out before our eyes. The following reveals what the agenda is, the people behind it, how it is being carried out, why you haven't heard about it, and most importantly, the dire consequences that face humanity should this agenda succeed. Chapter 1. What the agenda is. In the near future, Earth is dominated by a powerful world government. Once free nations are slaves to the will of a tiny elite, the dawn of a new dark age is upon mankind. Countries are a thing of the past. Every form of independence is under attack, with the family and even an individual itself nearing extinction. Close to 80% of Earth's population has been eliminated. The remnants of a once free humanity are forced to live within highly controlled, compact, prison-like cities. Travel is highly restricted. Superhighways connect the megacities and keep the population from entering into unauthorized zones. No human activity is private. AI supercomputers chronicle and categorize every action. A prison planet, dominated by a ruthless gang of control freaks whose power can never be challenged. This is the vision of the global elite. Their goal of total dehumanization, where the science of tyranny is law. A worldwide control grid designed to ensure the overlord's monopoly of power forever. Our species will be condemned to this nightmare future unless masses are awakened to the New World Order master plan and mobilized to defeat it. Part 1. The global elite, the people behind it. There is something behind the throne greater than the king himself. Sir William Pitt, House of Lords, 1770. The world is governed by personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes. Benjamin Disraeli, English statesman, 1844. The real truth of the matter is that a financial element in the large centers has owned the government since the days of Andrew Jackson. Franklin D. Roosevelt, 1933. In 1775, the American Revolution began. American colonies sought to detach from England an oppressive monarchy. Though many reasons are cited for the revolution, one in particular sticks out as the prime cause: King George III of England outlawed the interest-free independent currency the colonies were using and producing for themselves, in turn forcing them to borrow money from the Central Bank of England at interest, immediately putting the colonies into debt. And, as Benjamin Franklin later wrote, the refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system, which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators, was probably the prime cause of the revolution. In 1783, America won its independence from England. However, its battle against the central bank concept and the corrupt greed-filled men associated with it had just begun. So what is a central bank? A central bank is an institution that produces the currency of an entire nation. Based on historical precedent, two specific powers are inherent in central banking practice. 1. The control of interest rates and the control of money supply, or inflation. The central bank does not simply supply a government with money, it loans it to them at interest. Then, by the use of increasing and decreasing the supply of money, the central bank regulates the value of the currency being issued. It is critical to understand that the entire structure of this system can only produce one thing in the long run: debt. It doesn't take a lot of ingenuity to figure this scam out. For every single dollar produced by the central bank is loaned at interest. That means every single dollar produced is actually the dollar plus a certain percent of debt based on that dollar. And since the central bank has a monopoly of the production of the currency for the entire country, and they loan each dollar out with immediate debt attached to it, but where does the money to pay for the debt come from? It can only come from the central bank again, which means the central bank has to perpetually increase its money supply to temporarily cover the outstanding debt created, which in turn, since the new money is loaned out at interest as well, creates even more debt. The end result of this system without fail is slavery, for it is impossible for the government, and thus the public, to ever come out of this self-generating debt. The founding fathers of this country were well aware of this. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of currency, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of their property until they wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Thomas Jefferson, 1746-1826. If you want to remain the slaves of the bankers and pay for the costs of your own slavery, let them continue to create money and control the nation's credit. Sir Josiah Stamp, 1880-1941. The spark needed to initiate their plan. By the early 20th century, the U.S. had already implemented and removed a few central banking systems which were swindled into place by ruthless banking interests. At this time, the dominant families in the banking and business world were the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Warburgs, and the Rothschilds. And in the early 1900s, they sought to push once again legislation to create another central bank. However, they knew the government and public were weary of such an institution, so they needed to create an incident to affect the public opinion. So, J.P. Morgan, probably considered a financial luminary at the time, exploited his mass influence by publishing rumors that a prominent bank in New York was insolvent or bankrupt. Morgan knew that this would cause mass hysteria, which would affect other banks as well, and it did. The public, in fear of losing their deposits, immediately began mass withdrawals. Consequently, the banks were forced to call in their loans, causing the recipients to sell their property, and thus a spiral of bankruptcies, repossessions, and turmoil emerged. Putting the pieces together a few years later, Frederick Allen of Life magazine wrote, "The Morgan interests took advantage to precipitate the panic of 1907, guiding it shrewdly as it progressed." Unaware of the fraud, the panic of 1907 led to a congressional investigation headed by Senator Nelson Aldrich who had intimate ties to the banking cartels and later became part of the Rockefeller family through marriage. The commission, headed by Aldrich, recommended a central bank should be implemented, so a panic like 1907 could never happen again. This was the spark the international bankers needed to initiate their plan. A secret meeting and the Federal Reserve Act. In 1910, a secret meeting was held at a J.P. Morgan estate on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia. It was there that the central banking bill called the Federal Reserve Act was written. This legislation was written by bankers, not lawmakers. This meeting was so secretive, so concealed from government and public knowledge, that the 10 or so figures that attended disguised their names when en route to the island. After this bill was constructed, it was then handed over to their political frontman, Senator Nelson Aldrich, to push through Congress. And in 1913, with heavy political sponsorship by the bankers, Woodrow Wilson became president, having already agreed to sign the Federal Reserve Act in exchange for campaign support. And 2 days before Christmas, when most of Congress was home with their families, the Federal Reserve Act was voted in, and Wilson in turn made it law. Years later, Woodrow Wilson wrote in regret, "Our great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is privately concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men, who necessarily, by very reason of their own limitations, chill and check and destroy genuine economic freedom. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of small groups of dominant men." Congressman Louis McFadden also expressed the truth after the passage of the bill. A world banking system was being set up here, a superstate controlled by international bankers, acting together to enslave the world for their own pleasure. The Fed has usurped the government. A streamlined machine to expand their personal ambitions. Now the public was told that the Federal Reserve System was an economic stabilizer, and inflation and economic crisis was a thing of the past. Well, as history has shown, nothing was further from the truth. The fact is, the international bankers now have a streamlined machine to expand their personal ambitions. For example, from 1914 to 1919, the Fed increased the money supply by nearly 100%, resulting in extensive loans to small banks to the public. Then, in 1920, the Fed called in mass percentages of the outstanding money supply, thus resulting in the supporting banks having to call in huge numbers of loans, and just like 1907, bank runs, bankruptcy, and collapse occurred. Over 5,400 competitive banks outside of the Federal Reserve System collapsed, further consolidating the monopoly of the small group of international bankers. Privy to this crime, Congressman Charles Lindbergh stepped up and said in 1921, "Under the Federal Reserve Act, panics are scientifically created. The present panic is the first scientifically created one, worked out as we figure a mathematical equation." However, the panic of 1920 was just a warm-up. From 1921 to 1929, the Fed again increased the money supply, resulting once again in extensive loans to the public and banks. There was also a fairly new type of loan called the margin loan in the stock market. Very simply, the margin loan allowed an investor to put down only 10% of the stock's price, with the other 90% being loaned through the broker. In other words, a person could own $1,000 worth of stock with only $100 down. This method was very popular in the roaring 1920s, as everyone seemed to be making money in the market. However, there was a catch to this loan. It could be called in at any time and had to be paid within 24 hours. This is termed a margin call, and a typical result of a margin call is the selling of the stock purchased with the loan. So a few months before October in 1929, J.D. Rockefeller, Bernard Baruch and other insiders quietly exited the market. And on October 24, 1929, the New York financiers who furnished the margin loans started calling them in mass. This sparked an instantaneous massive sell-off in the market, for everyone had to cover their margin loans. It then triggered mass bank runs for the same reason, in turn, collapsing over 16,000 banks, enabling the conspiring international bankers to not only buy up rival banks at a discount, but to buy up whole corporations at pennies on the dollar. It was the greatest robbery in American history, but that didn't stop there. Rather than expanding the money supplier's recovery from this economic collapse, the Fed actually contracted it, fueling one of the largest depressions in history. Once again outraged, Congressman Louis McFadden and longtime opponent of the banking cartels began bringing impeachment proceedings against the Federal Reserve Board, saying of the crash and depression, it was a carefully contrived occurrence. International bankers sought to bring about a condition of despair so that they might emerge the rulers of us all. Not surprisingly, and after 2 previous assassination attempts, McFadden was poisoned at a banquet before he could push for the impeachment. Robbing the public of what they have left. Now, having reduced society to squalor, the Federal Reserve bankers decided that the gold standard should be removed. In order to do this, they needed to acquire the remaining gold in the system. So under the pretense of helping to end the Depression, came the 1933 gold seizure. Under the threat of imprisonment for 10 years, everyone in America was required to turn in all gold bullion to the Treasury, essentially robbing the public of what they have left. And at the end of 1933, the gold standard was abolished. If you look at a dollar bill before 1933, it says it's redeemable in gold. If you look at a dollar bill today, it says it is legal tender, which means it's backed by absolutely nothing. It's worthless paper. The only thing that gives our money value is how much of it is in circulation. Therefore, the power to regulate the money supply is also the power to regulate its value, which has the power to bring entire economies and societies to its knees. Give me control of a nation's money supply and I care not who makes its laws. Mayer Amschel Rothschild, founder of Rothschild banking dynasty. The same families still control it to this day. These people literally have the power to print money and have used this power to expand their own personal ambitions ever since. They create money out of nothing. What a scam. They have so much money that they don't care about money. All they care about is power. All they care about is to be able to control the political situation, so it goes their way. After a man has far more money that he possibly can spend for pleasures, what is left to excite him? For those with a ruling class mentality, the answer is power, raw power over other human beings. Money can buy such power only to a point. Beyond that, politics is the sport, and world politics is the ultimate game.